The steps we have taken to build in margin and open systems up front will allow us to address the evolving threat and embrace technological advancements. As we establish the initial capability, we have, are, and will continue to carefully balance the art of the possible with the art of the practical. We are and will continue to keep a watchful eye towards the future and adapt the platform to meet emerging and evolving threats. This balance has been at the forefront of the program from the very beginning and remains a cornerstone of the strategy today. The long-range strike bomber is crucial to our ability to execute the national military strategy in the future and ensure national command authorities have viable military options in the face of a technologically advanced adversary. I would now like to turn this over to Mr. Randy Walden to speak about the long-range strike bomber program, given his perspective as the program executive officer. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to address you and the committee today, and I look forward to your questions.
General, thank you. Mr. Walden, it's good to see you here, and thank you for the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be back and good to see you. Mr. Chairman, Representative Courtney, and members of the subcommittee, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address the subcommittee on the long-range strike bomber program, the future leg of the Air Force's long-range strike capability. As the program's executive officer, I'd like to highlight some of the things the Air Force has done to ensure the success of the LRSB program. From the very start, we've had Secretary of Defense guidance on the fundamental capabilities required for the nation, and our Chief of Staff continues to serve as the requirements owner. Additionally, the program office and the user personnel have been working side by side in the same office since the very beginning of the program. This unique teaming has helped define the trade space and form the right requirements for the program and capability. We drastically slashed the bureaucracy normally involved in getting a program to stable requirements, a key component in allowing us to snap the chalk line on the requirements early in the program planning. From an acquisition oversight standpoint, the program is important enough to this nation where the program manager and his team continue to work directly with Air Force and DoD acquisition senior leaders at the highest level to set and execute the program's strategy from day one. Overall, the LRSB will provide a key capability to the joint fight. Often we start new programs and overreach when it comes to the number of new capabilities and, quote, bleeding edge technology that must come together in development. Early on, we recognized that LRSB is a part of a larger family of systems, and we put only mature capabilities on LRSB as opposed to every good idea technology. In short, it does not have to be everything for everyone. More succinctly, we have a family of systems in a joint arena that serves as the centerpiece for the joint warfighting capability. As such, we've crafted the LRSB program strategy and capability to complement those capabilities while keeping affordability at the forefront. Finally, the long-range strike bomber program will be built as a capability for today with an eye on tomorrow, both from a threat and evolving technology perspective. The open mission systems approach that General Bunch brought up not only introduces evolving capability with greater ease and lower integration costs, it serves as the catalyst for greater competition throughout the life of the LRSB program. This in turn presents a greater value for our Air Force and our nation. It's an honor to serve alongside our great airmen and this great nation. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you here today, and I look forward to addressing your questions. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And General Rand, two questions for you. One of them a little more difficult than the other one, but the first one, just I thought it would be good for our record if you could take just a moment and tell us what Global Strike Command does, under your authority. And then the second part of that is, according to the quarterly readiness report, and we're going to have a slide up here in just a moment, the Bomber Force aircraft availability is around 50%. Can you explain to the committee what the contributing factors to this low level of readiness is and what your plan is to regain higher levels of readiness and when we can expect that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The first thing that Global Strike Command started in 2009, and it was an effort to, again, refocus our attention back on nuclear deterrence in the nuclear enterprise. And so when Strategic Air Command was put to rest back in 1990, we made a decision then to put our bombers in Air Combat Command. We put our missiles, our ICBM missiles, in Space Command. We put our air refueling tankers, and Air Mobility Command. And in 2009, we brought back Air Force Global Strike Command, and we are responsible for the bombers. Now I told you the B-1s become part of that, so all our bombers, conventional and nuclear, global strike in our ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles, are now in Global Strike Command. And so we work, a top priority is to support Admiral Haney and Strategic Command at OFT in his priorities. So I think that's a thumbnail sketch of what Global Strike Command does. The other thing, sir, that I'll tell you, refocus is to help I think, reinvigorate the nuclear command and control communications that are integral part of providing nuclear command and control for the President and our senior leaders. And Global Strike will be the lead for the Air Force on those systems that support nuclear command and control. And so that will be an increasingly top priority for this command. The question you asked about aircraft availability, if I can make a distinction between aircraft availability and mission capable rate. In aircraft availability, it's all the planes in a weapon systems, whether they are on the flight line or they're in some type of depot status. And that's important to note. It's all the planes. Those that are the maintainers and the flyers have access to, and those that are out of our pocket for whatever reason. Mission capable rate is the planes that are on station that actually you have your availability to, and those rates are different. Our mission capable rate are decent and comparable with most of the other weapon systems that we have. But aircraft availability, as you said, languishes a little bit. And part of the major reason for that is our relatively small fleet size that we have of our 3 bombers. Sir, we have 159 total bombers. Break that down to 76 B-52s. We have 63 B-1s, and we have 20 B-2s. At any time, and oh, by the way, the newest of the 3 bombers is the B-2, and it's 25 years old. So at any time, there's going to be a number of your aircraft that are in heavy maintenance depot status. And when you take those away and then you're doing modifications, a 50% available aircraft available rate is what is the result of that small number. In the B-2 example, we have about 11 or 12 airplanes at any time that we really can have our hands on. Some of the steps that we're taking, sir, to work this will be long range, will be the LRSB, because that will help our numbers and we'll have a larger number of airplanes. The other thing that we're working with is some of these modernization and recapitalization efforts are directly looking to be more efficient and to address some of the challenges that we have with obsolete weapon systems, platforms, the radar, the avionics, and by modernizing these, we're going to be able to have a much higher mean time between failures, if you will. And so those are the steps that we're taking, and I'm working those right now, and I'll be able to address some of those later on if you'd like in the hearing. What are some of the modernization efforts that are currently underway in all 3 platforms? And I have a laundry list of things that I can share with you if you would like.
General Bunch, the committee's been expecting an announcement on the new long-range strike aircraft for over 6 months. The delay already resulted in $460 million reduction from the program in the FY16 President's budget. Can you explain the continued delay for the down select announcement, and when can the committee expect reasonably that decision is going to be made?
Yes, sir. So this is a case, sir, where we need to go slow to go fast. We've got a fair, deliberate, disciplined, and impartial process anytime that we do a competition. And we've been transparent and working with industry and trying to get this thoroughly done and documented so that we can make that decision. It's coming soon. That's about as good as I can give you. The way we are approaching this, it's not schedule-driven. It's fact and decision point-driven based on the information we've got and the review that we have of the proposals. We're being very thorough. I'm very proud of the team. I believe when this comes out, it'll be a very good news story for how our acquisition workforce has done this, despite the fact that it has taken us longer to get here. And then as the announcement approaches, sir, we will inform committee leadership just prior to when we make the announcement so everyone is aware.
Do we have any idea whether that's going to be 2 months, 10 years? What do we think?
Sir, my hope is it's within the next couple of months, but we have details that we still have to work through to make sure we're doing it fair and make sure we're going through the process so that we got to get the start right. If we get the start right, we set the program up for success the rest of the way. That's the part we're so focused on, is trying to get that right now, sir.
Good. Mr. Walden, one more question I need to get on the record. The Air Force misstated the 10-year cost for research, procurement, and support of its long-range bomber in its annual report to Congress. Last year, the Air Force estimated the cost of the long-range strike bomber at $33.1 billion from FY15 through FY16. This year, it reported the FY16 through FY26 cost is $58.4 billion. Air Force stated both were incorrect and posited that $41.7 billion is the real number. How confident are you that we have the cost in control for this platform now?
Sir, very confident. The program office has estimated over the handful of years, and FY15 was the start of that, and that program office estimate was at $41.4 billion, and FY16 was at $41.7 billion. So the overall cost estimating of the program has been very stable, and I'm very confident in the ability for us to do that estimating. On top of that, we've been working closely with the non-advocate folks within the Air Force as well as OSD on doing independent cost estimates, and that's the foundation of that overall estimate. For the error portion, General Bunch has been working closely within the Air Staff to get to the process and error story, and he's probably best suited to answer that question.
So, Mr. Chairman, that is a regrettable error that we submitted inaccurate information to Congress in a report. We take that very seriously. We know the importance of providing decision makers accurate information, and as a result of that, Secretary James ordered a review of the process that we have within the Air Force, and to do thorough review of our processes and how those databases and how those information were collected. The process, it was both a process and a human error. We have counseled the individuals who were involved in the creation of the report. We have put new business guidelines in place for how we use the databases and how the program office estimates are rolled into those databases for how business is done in the future and what we provide. And we have also established new processes to ensure that those numbers are reviewed by additional parties that have an interest in that, to minimize the possibility that we'll provide, again, inaccurate information. And again, a regrettable error, one that we are not happy about. We take it very seriously, and we understand the critical importance of providing the proper information to Congress.
Well, thank you. And as we talked about earlier, they have called some votes at this particular point in time. We're going to have to take a recess in just a minute and come back. But Mr. Courtney, did you want to start some of your question? Would you rather wait and get them all in when we come back? Go ahead. We'll let Mr. Courtney begin, and then we'll take a recess and come back afterwards.
So thank you to the witnesses for being here and your outstanding testimony. General Rand, you just mentioned briefly in your opening remarks the 14,000 missions that have been flown in Southwest Asia. Just wondering, just for the sake of members who maybe aren't as familiar with the type of missions that the long-range bomber provides, in terms of support for ground forces or whatever, and what would be the harm or what impact would it be if we didn't have that capability and just had to rely on other fixed-wing types of planes that the Air Force flies? Because obviously this is a big investment we're looking at here, and I think it's important to establish, what's the value here that we're really talking about.
Absolutely.
Very specifically.
The three bombers, as you mentioned, two of the three are nuclear and conventional capable. The B-1 is conventional only. But in general, the purpose of long-range strike with a bomber is to be able to hold any target in the planet at risk. Not in weeks or months, but in hours. And that's the beauty of what a long-range bomber can do. We don't have to be as concerned with some of the basing options that you would have to be. We can go a long way with a decent payload, and we can hold targets at risk. We also are recallable. We also are flexible, and there's surge capabilities. So long-range strike gives combatant commanders and our senior leaders in this nation great flexibility to make sure that we are able to, when necessary, deter, and equally important, to assure many of our partner nations that we are there with them. Some recent examples, if I may, sir. The B-1s right now are fighting and have been fighting over the skies of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria for the last 12, 13 years, nonstop, 24/7. Doing a remarkable job at a low threat, not much of an anti-access environment, and working very closely with our Army, Navy, Marines, and airmen on the ground who are engaged in ground combat. And they've done that very successfully. They also have the capability to go long ranges. And a recent example of that was March of 2011 when they took off from Ellsworth in a driving snowstorm and flew nonstop to Libya, and were able to do some very, very serious damage to the Libyan regime at the time, as well as exactly what the B-2s did in 2011 against Gaddafi. Most recently, in North Korea, when there was a flare-up back in August, we had our 6 B-52s that have been on a continuous bomber presence at Guam for the last decade, nonstop, and we were in the middle of a swap-out. 6 were going in to replace the 6 that were there, and the PACOM commander immediately contacted the Joint Staff and Air Force Global Strike and said, could we leave those 6 additional B-52s longer? We really like the presence. In addition, the B-52s and B-2s 2 years ago flew a nonstop trip from their bases to the Republic of Korea, released training ordinances on one of the ranges, and flew back nonstop. I think that gives a perspective of how we can hold enemies at risk in, again, hours versus weeks. Did I answer your question? Thank you, sir.
Members, agreeable, we're going to take a recess till after the votes. We'll come back, we'll pick up with Mr. Courtney's questions, and then move on to the other questions we have. Gentlemen, again, we apologize, but thank you for your patience. And with that, thank you for your patience and allowing us to get through those votes. And when we left, Mr. Courtney was in the process of asking some of his questions, so we yield the floor once again to Mr. Courtney for any questions he might have.
With the Air National Guard modernization in terms of trying to comply with the 2020 international flight restrictions that are going into effect. And I was just sort of wondering if you could talk about that, whether that's an issue. I mean, obviously these are old planes which long predate some of these new rules going into effect. And is that something that you've already started to change in terms of the avionics, or is that something that's sort of still out there in the future?
So, sir, I'll take the first hit at that. I think one of the ones you're talking about there is the 130 modernization, that we've been C-130 modernization in the AMP program. And where we're at on the AMP program is that we've reinvigorated and revised it. We built a roadmap ahead that is funded through the Air Force, through the FIDEP. It is focused on three main areas. The first area is focused on safety, the second, and obsolescence. The second area is focused on compliance with those mandates that you have talked about. And the last of those is focused on modernization. The program that we've laid out, the Guard, Reserve, and the Active are all on board. And we have a program that meets those compliance.
I guess my question is this something that the bomber fleet has to deal with as well?
There are certain things that we have to look at in the roadmap for what we do with our IFF, Information Friend or Foe activities. Those are all laid into what we're looking at for the plan, sir. We don't see a roadblock there for what we're trying to do.
The gentlelady from Missouri is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. And it was so nice to meet you, General Rand, the other night at the evening tattoo and the celebration of the birthday of the Air Force. I highly recommend that to any member of HASC, and certainly was very proud to get to be a part of that and proud of the Air Force. And of course, we're so proud of what's going on at Whiteman. Appreciate your support of that. Just wanted to ask, as you were talking about parts sustainability, and this has been, of course, a huge issue ever since I've been in office with the B-2, with only having 20, and I know that there have been many gains made in that, but we still have a ways to go there. And this is just kind of outside the box thing, reading in your testimony about the difficulty in trying to keep manufacturers and others interested in carrying out those contracts. I was just reading last week, being a part of the subcommittee, with some information the chairman and others provided about the Navy and how they're integrating 3D parts building in their naval vessels to help address some of their things. I recently toured the National Security Campus in Kansas City. That's pretty amazing place, and they were showing me the 3D parts development and manufacturing that they're doing there, and how it is producing lighter, cheaper, faster parts. So I was just wondering, are you aware if this has been tried any in the B-2 as we look at manufacturers that are dropping out from being willing to, maybe having our own production in certain parts?
So, ma'am, we are looking, and the Air Force Sustainment Center does look at adaptive manufacturing or 3D manufacturing. Mm-hmm. We've not found a lot of applicability to what we're trying to do at this particular moment. You do raise a very good point that I think is important as we look at the long-range strike bomber. One of the issues we've had with the B-2 fleet is the small size of the fleet and trying to get people to bid when you're trying to build parts for those things. And I think we've come out and said we need 100 of the long-range strike bombers. That's the position that we've been on with. And as we've tried to do competitions to get people to bid on 20, it's often hard to do when manufacturing companies want to bid on hundreds or thousands. We believe keeping the right long-range strike bomber fleet size will make that more easily competed and more sustainable in the longer term, ma'am.
Absolutely, and I support that. I think most of us understand the mistake that was made in dropping down those numbers to only 20. So I hope we'll be able to carry out those larger numbers than that. Are there ever incentives paid to those companies? I mean, to get to stay in business, to keep those parts? Or,
We do those. Sometimes we'll do life of aircraft buys, so we'll go look at certain components and we'll figure out how many we think will go through the life of the platform, and we may buy larger quantities and put them back on the shelf so that we can do it. Another area that we're looking at in the B2 to try to improve the parts flow is we're trying to bring some things in organic. And the other one that we talked about earlier and we've referenced is the open mission systems.
right.
As we move to more open mission systems, and that's a focus area that we've got across our inventory, as we move to the more open mission systems, that will allow us even at some of those subcomponent levels to be able to compete additional, more than we can today. So we think there are some avenues we're doing where we try to do it organically within our workforce. We're also trying to open it up to more competition as we go to more open mission systems. And sometimes, man, we get to the point we have to do a life of the platform buy. We estimate what the economic service life of the aircraft is, and we'll buy the number of parts we think we'll run through for the life of the program. That's the efforts that we have now, ma'am.
Appreciate you, General Bunch, for sharing that. I want to switch gears real quickly, but as you know, reportedly that China and Russia are developing new radars or defense systems that other capabilities to counter our stealthy aircrafts, and certainly that is a concern. So how do you see the Air Force maintaining its ability to penetrate A2AD environments to perform long-range strikes operations as anti-stealth technologies mature over time?
So, ma'am, the adaptability that we built in with open mission systems and the innovative design that we've envisioned and the requirements we put in place for the long-range strike bomber, we have the adaptability we need with the open mission system. So if we run into it, and we realize the enemy's going to evolve and they're going to try to they watch us and they're adapting to address what we're trying to do. So the open mission system allows us, as that changes, we can add in new capabilities that are not in the platform today, or we can replace the capabilities or the subsystems that we have in the aircraft today with more advanced ones to try to ensure, not try to ensure that we have the ability to address those future threats.
Right. Thank you. Get back.
Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Graham, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for being here today. As we discuss, and we've been discussing in quite a few hearings, our aging, the challenges we face with our aging fleets, is there a way to possibly consider the weapons themselves and using technology to modernize the weapons system that could potentially help with this challenge that we face?
So, ma'am, we are looking at the longer term for what we're doing with our weapons inventories. One of the programs that's in, not even officially, it's one we've talked about, but it's not fully been formed as a program, is a long-range standoff weapon. That's to replace our air-launched cruise missiles. The air-launched cruise missiles were weapon systems that were bought and procured in the 80s with a 10-year life expectancy, that we have done service life extension programs for multiple years. Now what we're focused on is how do we replace that, because we're not going to be able to extend them much longer. So we're initiating a program to allow us to be able to hold targets at risk in that manner. That is one thing, but it's not fully capable of doing what we need the long-range strike bomber to do, which is to penetrate and hold all those targets at risk and give our national command authorities the flexibility to execute military options if needed.
General Rand, did you have anything to add?
Yes, ma'am. The LRSO is one example, but another would be on the B-52. It's carrying all the newest and latest and greatest weapons that we have now, and in fact, it's currently undergoing an upgrade and modification to an internal weapons bay. It's called the 1760 Integrated Weapons Bay Upgrade. That's going to allow it to carry internally our most modern weapons that we have, our JASM, our JDAM. That will help carry a larger payload and also reduce the drag from having it externally hanging on the airplane. So those are some of the very things that we are modernizing, even though it's a 60-year weapons frame. We are putting the best weapons that we have on it, and it's capable of carrying it.
Well, thank you, and I just want to thank all of you. And I'm so proud to represent Tyndall Air Force Base and small little piece of Eglin as well. in North Florida, and thank you very much for what you all do to serve our country. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my
You're
time.
welcome. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if you can speak to how the LRSB acquisition program, as you see it, differs from other programs that we've seen in the past that have experienced really massive cost overruns, and what have you learned from the past that will prevent that from occurring with this?
So two big things up front. One, stable requirements, and then the mature technology out there. The most important thing now is to be able to integrate that technology, and that would be the highest risk to the overall program. And I think we've got that pretty much under control. The overall program's engineering, manufacturing, development program would buy down that risk. For the past 4 years, we have been working closely with the offers, contractors, and industry on buying down that risk and investing heavily and making sure that we're not putting any immature technology in there and adding more risk than we need or cost to the overall program.
So, ma'am, can I add to that just one item? I think there's a couple of other things that through better buying power and bending the cost curve, those are initiatives within the OSD and within the Air Force that it plays into this. And one of those is our open and transparent relationship with our industry partners. We've had a very open discussion with them about what the requirements are, how we were going to grade, what was going to be looked at in the source selection. And I believe that openness and sharing of information has allowed them to fully understand what we're trying to do, what risks we are willing to take, and has allowed them to give us ideas as to where we are taking risks and be a better informed buyer. So I think that one's another one, ma'am, that sets us up a little differently on this one. The other one that I would say is, as the technology is mature, we're structuring the contract so that we have incentives in place to keep the cost from going too high, to the point that we will limit the amount of profit if it goes too high. And when we go into the production, one of the things we're doing different on this program that we've not done on other programs, we're going to get a firm fixed price for production for the first 5 sets to get us up to 1/5 of the inventory. And we've not done that on any development program we've done in quite some time where it's a brand new aircraft that's coming out. That is a strategy that we've done to ensure we lock in the prices and we make sure we have a firm way to control the costs as we go forward. I think those are a couple of other things we've done a little differently on this program, ma'am.
Yeah. You spoke of maturing technology, and I think one of the issues that's most often brought up when we look at not only our capabilities but the capabilities of those in the environment around us is the increasing A2AD environments. Can you speak to how you see these long-range strike operations developing and how they can be carried out in the future in order to penetrate those environments?
Yes, ma'am. The family of systems is what we're referred to with the long-range strike bomber. And if you would look at what we currently have today in terms of electronic warfare, electronic attack, suppression of enemy air defenses, our way to combat, cyber and communication concerns. I would think that when we're fielding the LRSB, those grandsons of what current systems we have today will be an integral part of the LRSB, and it will be a combined effort. So the LRSB won't be going it alone, and that's the beauty of being able to parlay the technologies that we have and that we're already advancing in these families of systems that we have. And that's a very, very important part. Absolutely. And then the weapons that the LRSB will also carry, it's very incumbent that it has a standoff capability. And that's why I think when Mr. Walden talked about the long range, the standoff LRSO, why that's such an important, or General Bunch did, why it's so important that we modernize and recapitalize on that capability.
Just to add to that, in the early days I mentioned about the technology development, we did look at what the threat was doing with an eye on the technology we'd want to put on the platform, not only in the near future but into the far future. General Bunch kind of touched on the ability for us to try to modernize and keep up with a changing threat. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. So hopefully that helped.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
That concludes all of our subcommittee members who had questions, and based on the motion we had at the beginning of the hearing, we now recognize Mr. Fleming for 5 minutes for any questions he might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to sit in on this subcommittee, even though you did make me sit at the kids' table. That's okay.
We were putting you up front.
Oh, I see. I get that. I get that. Thanks. Let's see. General Rand, great to see you. Welcome again to Barksdale Air Force Base, Bossier City, Shreveport. That's in my district. That's where we have headquarters of Air Force Global Strike Command, and we're excited about having you. And you're going to be a great addition to our community. I did have some questions for you regarding the long-range strike bomber. Regarding that mission, what are the factors that drive the total bomber requirement, and how many bombers will the Air Force need to meet combatant commander needs once the LRSB procurement is complete?
Yes, sir. That's a fair question, and it is one that we haven't firmed up yet. We currently have 159 bombers, of which 96 are combat coded. I certainly can't imagine a situation where we could ever be less than that, in my humble opinion. As we get the LRSB in production, we procure them and start fielding them, that we will have to have a very healthy discussion of the requirements. What is the end state for then? That'll be the 4 bombers that we'll have. It would be premature to have that discussion right now, but I think that going in with the 100 as a requirement and knowing that several of the other bombers will be augmenting our LSRB for quite a long time, our LRSB for a significant time, we're going to be in that 159 range.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Assuming a full LRSB procurement of that 80 to 100 that you're referring to, can you discuss the value of B-52 modernization, specifically re-engineering, new radar, beyond line of sight communications, regional data link systems, et cetera?
Absolutely, I can, sir. Thank you for that opportunity. The B-52 still does things that is unique to that weapon system. It's the only system we have in our Air Force that do some of the things it does. And as I mentioned earlier, it has the nuclear and conventional capability, very important to us. It has the long-range standoff capability, very important to us. It has an enormous payload, great range. The airplane is an amazing workhorse despite being 60 years old. So it's incumbent to me that we modernize and continue to modernize the B-52 because we're going to be relying on its service for many years to come. And some of the things we are doing as we speak are the combat network communications technology that's going to really help the situational awareness of the air crews, the ability to do a lot better management of how things are coming into the cockpit, moving map, machine-to-machine technology, if you will. I mentioned already earlier about our 1760 integrated weapons bay upgrade. That's very important to us because we'll be able to carry a larger payload and we'll be able to go farther because we'll reduce the drag by not having the external weapons on board. I'm very interested, and I'm going to work with my counterparts here and certainly the air staff to have good discussions in procuring Link 16 for the B-52. It's currently the only combat airplane that we don't have that's on the network of Link 16, and that's really important for other Navy, our joint partners, and our Air Force to be able to see where the B-52s are and for them to see where other assets are. I mentioned earlier to you, sir, the importance that I think we have an 80s radar that still has 60s technology that we're using, and as we address the A2AD environment, a radar is still very important to be able to, that last place where we're at, to give that last guidance to the weapons. And so I would like to do what we can to procure a new radar. And finally, I would like to have some good discussions at the air staff on the possibility of re-engineering the B-52 to reduce the fuel requirements, efficiency, increase our range, we can go higher, we can go farther, reduce the tanker requirements. There's many benefits of a
Right.
possible re-engineering, but that would be premature. It also has a considerable
Right.
cost that goes
So it's
with it.
going to be a good while before we get the long-range strike bomber off the assembly line. There's a lot of opportunities to enhance and improve what we already have in our fleet and our inventory to kind of bridge that gap.
Sir, you're spot on. 2025 is what we're hopeful for ILC, the initial operation capability of LRSB. It will take several years to procure whatever buy we end up with. We are easily talking the B-52 into the 2040s is I think, a more than viable platform for us. So any monies that we invest today, we will get our return on this.
Right.
This won't be something that we won't be using in 5 years from now.
Right. Thank you. And yeah, would you?
Can I
if
add,
the
we
chairman
need
will
to do
allow?
that. We talked about the B-52. We also need to do that on the B-1 and the B-2. We've got to keep all of those relevant so that we have our options open as we get beyond and we get the long-range strike bomber on board so that we can decide how we need to shape our force to face that challenge that may be out there in the future.
And that's a great point. And right now, in all three bombers, there's FY16 dollars that we are aggressively using to make modifications in modernization on every one of our platforms. And I'm happy to share the B1 and the B2 initiatives we have as well.
Great. Great. Thank you. And I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. And as we said at the outset also, we want to give you any opportunity you need to take a few minutes. If there's something that we didn't include in the transcript that you think is important to get in there, or something that was mischaracterized, or you might want to change now, this is your time to do it, and we'll start with you, General Rand.
Sir, I'll just foot stomp what I said earlier. I think it's incumbent upon us to realize that the long-range strike capability is something that our nation absolutely has to have. To do that, we've got to be able to modernize our current bomber fleet, and we got to acquire a new LRSB, and I think we're on the path to doing that. I think it's critical that we are able to hold our enemies at bay and keep them at risk and anywhere at any time. And I appreciate the support that you're providing us to be able to, one, advocate, and two, endorse and be our cheerleaders as we go down this road. Because while some of these bombers are mature, they're very capable, and our nation needs them. So thank you.
General, thank you. General Bunch?
Sir, I just want to talk one more moment about the Section 1047 error that we, the Air Force, made as we submitted our report. Again, that's a regrettable error, and we understand fully the importance of providing accurate information to Congress. I want to stress to everybody that the program office estimates had absolutely and nothing with the long-range strike bomber had anything to do with that error. The error was a process and a human error. Secretary James took it very seriously, and we have counseled the individuals, and we've changed our processes to minimize it. I just want to make sure we characterize it as nothing to do with what the LRSB program office had done. They provided all the information, and it was internal to the air staff that the error occurred. I want to follow along with General Rand and stress that the long-range strike bomber is crucial to the Air Force's ability to execute the national military strategy in the future, and particularly in an anti-access area denial role. We need this capability in the field so that we can continue to give the national command authorities options to prosecute targets and continue to serve as a world power and execute our mission. Thank you, sir.
General, thank you. And Mr. Wall, we'll give you cleanup.
Yes, sir, thanks. One, I think the team, the LRSB team, has worked very hard to get to where we are today. We believe we're ready to execute the program. The source selection is almost over. We're ready to make that down select and move on with building the next generation bomber, a long-range strike bomber for the nation. So look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And once again, as we said at the outset, we just appreciate all three of you being here, but also all of your staffs. We know how hard your staffs work to get you the information and to help you do what you do. And to all the men and women who serve under you, we thank you for their efforts. And with that, Ms. Graham, if you have nothing else, then we're adjourned.